Hello, everybody. Welcome to Take Two. Glad you guys can join us. Jason is here with us live, and as that is the case, I want to throw out to you again, if you guys would like to come down, there is room here. I think we have about 20 seats available here, and we're not going to fill those up probably on a Wednesday night, but you're welcome to come here and be spaced out. And again, join us as we start kind of stepping into some more time and community together. And we hope that you will take the initiative and join us when you can. Again, we're meeting here Sunday mornings at 10 a.m. So we're outside live. And then again, we have the seats here inside as well. Right now, the weather's been nice, so it hasn't been too bad come July, August. I don't know how outside's going to fare. We'll see what we do then. Maybe, I don't know. We'll talk about it more later. Also, I mentioned Sunday that we are going to have an all church, I guess, Zoom meeting, and I said July 11th, and it's actually June 11th. And so it's Friday, June 11th on Zoom at 7 p.m. We are going to get a link out to you guys soon to let you know, and we'll keep reminding you about it. And we're going to probably send text to everybody who we know to inundate you with that invitation, because we want to see your face again on Zoom, let you know some things that are going on, and hear from you, even get some input from you who are going through pandemic and haven't had the chance to voice maybe to us here at Genesis all the things that are going on. Of course, we always welcome those things. If you ever want to email, most of you have my phone number. You can always call me. I am available to talk about anything that you're concerned with or would like to see take place. So that's an invitation. June 11th, 7 p.m. on Zoom. Hope to see you there. But right now, we are here. And we are talking about basically what it means to discern those things that we encounter with God. And just for a quick review, I mean, on the board, I've kind of been talking for a while, just this transformation. We've talked about detecting when God is ministering to us through what we've called kairos, opportune moments of time that we want to lean into, dig into, try and discover what is happening, what is the story that we need to hear, and how do we need to respond to it. And then we're also now looking at discerning. When we find out something, we need to discern what this is telling us. And many times what we find is, as we start looking in these things, there's a story we tell ourselves, or bad news. And the bad news is things that question God's love for us, or us living in the love of God. And I've been talking about those things. The first one was security. The second one that I did past Sunday was on belonging. And then the third one that we'll do next Sunday is going to be on significance. But on belonging, the lie that we tell ourselves is that we are what people think we are. And we allow what people think to shape who we are in unhealthy ways. Of course, it can always be in healthy ways. People give us good advice, counsel. That can be a good thing. But many times the unhealthy thing is we're trying to please someone because we think we're insufficient. So that's kind of the backdrop. And I'm going to kind of throw it to you, Randy, and get your thoughts or questions, or how you'd like to kind of come into this.
All right. Well, I think, first of all, talking about the series one more time. So we've kind of gone from a very high level overview, the four squares, right? The four quadrants, and we've been kind of deep diving. So I keep picturing this like excavation happening where there's this machine that's like boring itself down into my soul. And every time I get there, I'm like, oh, I have to deal with this now, and I have to deal with that. I have to come face to face with these things. But these are real, security and belonging. I'm sure significance. Those are really big things in my mind, in my world, because they're not necessarily bad things. Right. It's the way that we're. It's the way that we condition ourselves to think through them that typically lends them to not be helpful in our relationships. And so with this one, I was thinking about this idea. So I, Brendan Manning is an author that that I have kind affections for, and he wrote one time. I can't remember what book it was in though, but he was talking about when he was 8. He said, when I was 8 years old. I'm going to butcher this story a little bit, but I'll get the point across. When I was 8 years old, I did something in front of my peers that embarrassed me. And, people laughed and whatever. He said, my 8-year-old self said within me, that's the last time you're going to be real. Mm-hmm. He said, because these people don't like you when you're real. Mm-hmm. And so he said, I learned at 8 years old to develop a self that people will admire. And that's the one I always put forward. And now as he was writing this in his 60s and was like still struggling through it because that's real. That's the Facebook world. That's what I was talking about, that idea that we always put forward the good things that we want people to see, but we don't talk about the laundry or the debt or whatever it might be that we don't want people to see.
Yeah, no, and that's such a good point that it's not always bad, right? Security, belonging, these are natural things that we desire. The problem is when they come out of place and then they almost, in a sense, becomes idols, right? Yep. Where I need this to feel secure and I need people's approval to feel secure. Yep. That's now become an idol because you're catering to what these people think instead of being genuine who God made you and not realizing, that God cares and kind of accepts you as that. I shared that story when I was little and trying to impress the next door neighbor girl, same thing. It's like, I want approval. I want to be noticed. And then it doesn't go well. It ends up you falling out of the tree or me falling out of the tree and, crying in front of the neighbor girl instead of being a hero or whatever I thought I was going to be at 7 years old. But those are the kinds of things that do start to shape how we are going to conduct ourselves. I'm going to make sure I don't fall. I'm going to make sure I don't look bad. I'm going to make sure I don't say anything that might come across as, an opportunity for someone to take shots at me, those kinds of things. Mm-hmm. And so we can play it safe. And this is for people, all ages, all occupations, right? It happens to pastors. It happens to people in school. It's something that we all have to contend with, this wanting to please. And I think I want to lean in a little bit more when you said that these aren't always bad. What ways does it come across to you as good, to lean into what people think about us in belonging? Can you think of maybe a scenario where it would be a good thing?
Certainly, like you said, it's innate in us to want to belong to something bigger than what we are, right? That's not bad. In fact, that's what we see in scriptures when we talk about, Father, Son, and Spirit, right? These belong.
Yeah.
They belong where they're at. Or beyond that, us in community with one another. Those are good belongings, right? Mm-hmm. Those are good things. The Psalms say that God places the lonely in families. That's powerful.
Yeah.
So in those bigger ways, I think, when you're not trying to maybe earn or finagle your way into being accepted.
Yeah.
When it's a natural acceptance.
Yeah, and I think almost, just as you're saying that, I think there's a difference between wanting to be accepted and needing approval. Mm-hmm. I think there could be an important difference there, where I want to belong to a family, I want to belong to a community, I want people to accept me. That's natural. But needing approval from others to feel accepted is where it starts to go awry. Yeah. Right? Where maybe that's where the idolatry kind of aspect of it comes in, where now I'm manipulating this because I need this to feel secure. So I'm going to change the situation so I can get the security I need and belonging in a way that isn't healthy. Because now I'm needing something and I'm conforming to what I need to get that for myself, to give that sense of belonging.
Yeah. I mean, you said on Sunday morning, I'm paraphrasing you, but you said that Jesus, he loved the people that were supporting him, but he didn't feel the need to earn or to grapple with their approval or acceptance.
Yeah, in
because
fact,
he already knew he had it. Right?
Yeah, in fact, sometimes he said, "Get thee behind me, Satan." Right? I mean, to Peter, it's like, no, that's not who I am. That's not who you're going to make me. That's not my purpose. And so he knew who he was. So he knew when someone was trying to make him fit their agenda instead of his call, we'll call it. Then he was able to stop it. And those times where he told his disciples, "Don't tell anyone." Tell the people he heals, "Don't tell anybody what I did."
Yeah.
How do you not? And so the whole point is he didn't need people's approval, and when they wanted to make him king, he rejected it because he knew it was in people. He knew human nature, and so he wasn't going to allow their agenda to be put on him.
Right.
And I wonder how many times we let other people's agendas be put on us. I mean, I can think of ways, even in churches,
Yeah.
where I'm so wanting to please people that it shapes what I'm going to say, right? And I don't want to offend anyone. And I don't want to say things just to be offensive, right? I want to be wise. But sometimes a person can be so guarded because of what can be, construed in a negative way or cause pushback. And if it's, a smaller group or something, or if you feel like your, livelihood is connected to it, all those things can now change how honest you are. Or if you start catering to what other people want instead of the things that you feel.
Yeah. You start politicking, right?
Yeah.
You start going, well, I need to make these people happy, so I can't go out. I can't speak the truth necessarily. I'll just speak this much of the truth to keep everybody placid and okay.
It's so funny because I remember hearing pastors say that, but it was always in a different context. It was always in a way that almost, I don't know, they'd say, "Oh, you got to tell people the good news," or "You got to tell people the gospel," which is basically you're going to hell if you don't accept Jesus. And they were speaking to the choir. You know what I mean? It's like we're telling our team what the team already believes and saying, "Oh, that's what I'm not going to compromise," is what we already believe. The problem comes when you start swaying from that belief and causing, pushback to what people are holding in general. That's when you really know if you're doing that or not. And so I just think it's a little bit more nuanced in that way. But approval is kind of an important thing, to humanity, and recognizing our desire for it can be problematic. I share some things that throughout Scripture we see examples of wanting approval. I mentioned the Tower of Babel. They're going to make their name great, choosing Saul to be king because he looked good, and all the other nations had king. Peter leaving the Gentile table and sitting with the Jews because he didn't want them to think bad of him. It was kind of offset. All those are examples in Scripture of how we allow the influences to shape us in maybe unhealthy ways.
Yeah. I mean, and just bringing that, I guess, to our day and age, people all the time, or I'll speak from my experience, and then maybe you had similar experiences, but the urge to act a certain way around certain people, or I've seen people completely like shapeshift their personality because somebody else walked in the room and this is the person that I want to impress, right?
Yeah.
Business situations, or even in families. I've seen it happen in families too. So yeah, that need for approval drives us in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
It's a big one, and it can even, it can make you do ugly things.
Yeah. I start with the temptation of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
where you throw yourself off the temple, the angels will take charge of you and keep you from, you know, dashing your foot against a stone. And then Jesus' response is, you will not put the Lord your God to the test. And then the last part of that scripture that he doesn't say, as you did, and Massa, I think it was. The whole point there is they were grumbling about water and not having what they needed, and that idea of fear of not being enough, so I am going to complain about it or take it into my own hands, right? I'm not going to put the Lord God to the test to get something
Mm-hmm.
because I feel that he is not taking care of what I really need, right? And I think that cuts to the heart of this idea of belonging, and how if you are loved, if you are beloved, uh, if you feel like you're enough, then you don't have to pretend, and you don't have to be afraid that you aren't going to have enough, because you already do, right?
Yeah. When I was youth pastor, again going back to those days, um, there would be, you do like a youth retreat, you maybe do a few a year or whatever. And Saturday night was always the huge, like, someone's going to do an altar call,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to be a huge emotional night. There's going to be an awesome worship band, and all this stuff is going to happen. And uh, I started recognizing pretty early on that the same kids would always be coming forward to the altar calls. And I grew up Catholic, so I don't think I ever went to an altar call. This was just a thing that,
Mm-hmm.
this church did, and so this is part of the plan. Um, but I remember, thinking like, man, this insecurity of being 14 or 15 and thinking that you messed up and now God doesn't love you, and so you've got to do this whole thing all over. You're starting all over again.
Yeah.
And this goes on into adulthood, because if you don't know that you are beloved,
Yeah.
if you don't know who you are, in Christ, if you don't know the identity, then these things are going to always plague you.
Yeah.
And even if you do know who you are, like,
Yeah, you still. In fact, that's the problem. I do know who I am,
Yeah.
and so I feel insufficient, and so therefore, because of the world we live in, it comes across as, okay, I got to make it up somehow, right?
yeah,
Now that's heavy. I mean, just that realization of, because I've been there. I don't know how many altar calls I made, a few, I think. I think after a while, I just like, I can't go up again because I've already gone up.
they see me.
Yeah, they see me. They know my name.
You're a professional
Um,
altar call
yeah.
acceptor.
But that someone would feel that they've blown it with God and they're no longer accepted. Gosh, why would they feel that? You know what I mean? That seems like if that's the job of anyone, it's the job of the pastor. It's the job of, someone who's taking care of them,
Mm-hmm.
is to let them know that you are never in that place, right? And yeah, they might need reminding. I know I do, but that would be it. And I guess, I think what happens with this whole altar call, uh, you know, life that we live in now, or this,
Sinner's
altar
prayer.
call. Yeah, this Christianity that hasn't been around very long, really, um, is at some point the person who goes and answers the altar call looks back and sees their life maybe going in the same direction, or being aware of problems that they're having, being aware that they need to make changes because things aren't good. And it starts dawning on them, going forward and repeating a prayer after me is not enough to change a life. And if it's not enough to change a life, it's probably not enough to be forgiven. In other words, that's not what's necessary to bring the change. Something else must need to take place because this ain't working. There becomes an awareness to the reality of what you're doing not having an effect. I remember I was driving a guy, he was homeless because of drugs, and he had been struggling and needing help again, and we were helping him again. And I remember telling him, you've got to accept Jesus. And he says, I did. Why am I still here? And I was like, I don't know how to answer that one, right? It's like, well, you gotta, it's almost like you gotta believe more. You just gotta have real faith, those kinds of things. And then it's like, no, the guy needed all kinds of help, right? He needed to get in rehab. He needed a support system. He needed a lot of things. But this idea of you just got to say a prayer, it didn't work for him.
Well, yeah. I mean, I've had the same exact experience in my life. And then also not knowing what to say, but all those things that you're talking about, like, yeah, what he needed was more help, right?
Yeah.
He needed professional help. He needed, structural help, like how to put my life back together, all those things. And that's probably why God put you in his life or put me in my guy's life, right? Because it was like, no, you're not just supposed to tell him about me. You're supposed to, there's this whole shalom piece, this whole healing and helpful, like being a good neighbor thing, like where you actually put the guy on the donkey and take him to the end. Those are things that's where we fall short because we just think it's this little message, this little prayer or whatever it is. And that's enough.
And I think that goes back to the heart. What does it mean to belong, right?
Yeah.
We have such shallow, I guess, interpretations of it now because it's like, how many likes do I have? Oh, I belong. And that's not belonging. That's not connection. That's not you being able to be with someone in real life. I mean, I think about, Peter's denial of Jesus. And we'll probably talk about this later on, but when Jesus appears to him on the shore and tells them to cast the net on the other side of the boat, and then they can't bring in all the fish, the boat is sinking, and then John says, it's the Lord. Peter dives in, comes up. When Peter gets there, the restoration isn't, Peter, repent, say a prayer. The restoration isn't, do you see what you've done? Do you believe now? The restoration was he ate with him. In other words, you're still at my table, which means you're still family. And there was the dialogue. He says, do you love me? And then he says, feed my sheep. Restoration looks totally different there than what I've been taught it looks like. For me, restoration is you do these things, you make these steps, you make sure that person is done with whatever that sin is that they did, and that they're, now going to toe the line, and you make sure that they understand the right, the wrong, and Jesus sits and eats with them. And I think that's what you said, the idea of, connection, the idea of I'm going to be here with you. I'm going to be a part of this with you. That's restoration, right? And that's belonging.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't, here's what the wrong thing you did was, Peter. Here's how to not do that again. It is, let's eat.
It's a beautiful story because he asked the question 3 times, right?
Yeah.
And it wasn't like, here's your penance, but it was like he kind of tied it to it.
Yeah.
Without putting it in his face.
Yeah. And the way he did it too, I mean, I know we've shared this before, just the words that are used. When Jesus says, Peter, do you love me? He uses the word agape. Are you given to me completely? And Peter responds, Lord, I love you. And he uses the word phileo.
Yeah.
Right? And so Jesus says again, Peter, do you agape me? And he says, Lord, I phileo you. And the last time Jesus says, Peter, do you phileo me? And it just breaks his heart. He goes, Lord, you know all things, right? That's who I am. And it's enough. Right? Jesus doesn't say, no, you need to agape me, Peter. Say it. Right? Say the word. Say the word.
Yeah.
He just says, okay, then this is what I have for you to do. He meets him where he is. He belongs where he is. He doesn't have to become something to belong. He doesn't have to say another prayer. He doesn't have to accept Jesus again. he just eats with them and continues with him as if nothing happened, as if there was no sever in the relationship, as if, I mean, he talks to Peter about it in that way, but it isn't like, okay, now we can get back to it. It's almost like, Peter, I never stopped loving you. You never stopped belonging to me.
Yep.
It never changed. Just continue doing what you're supposed to do. And what a change that would be if we had that sense of belonging, in our lives. If we taught the youth, instead of, hey, you need to make an altar call. Oh boy, we're having a band come to church. Oh man, I hope our kids go because I need them to accept the Lord again, right? It's like, no, maybe we just need to tell them that they're loved already, even where they're at, even if they don't agape, they just phileo. It's like, okay, still
Can work with
part.
that.
Yeah, we can still be part of this family.
Absolutely.
I went through a series of ways that the temptation of belonging might be at work in us. I kind of named a few things. Like when I'm trying to impress others, how do I? Is it with my intellect, my humor, being nice, my fashion, my athletic abilities, my talents? If I am trying to impress them in one of these ways, it might be because I'm trying to belong. In other words, I don't feel I belong. I'm manipulating the situation to make myself feel belonging. I said the need to set the record straight on a misunderstanding about my actions or character. If I think someone said something and they might misconstrue it and think bad of me, and I feel like I need to make sure you don't think bad of me, why am I so worried? Right? It might be. Now, these things might not be. They might be legitimate that you should do these things, but these are just ways that this temptation of belonging might be taking place. I don't know if there were any of those. I can go through them, or do you remember any of those, or did anything stand out to you when I went through those?
Yeah. I mean, yeah. I mean, are you asking me which ones I do? Because I can list those off. But yeah, no, I think that, I mean, that all made a lot of sense to me because I know that, again, in certain situations in my life, maybe they're business-wise or, in my marriage even, right? Like in different ways with my family or with my in-laws, there's different ways in which, for the longest time, Bree was like, "Why are you so quiet around my mom?" And I was like, "I'm not." But I feel like I'm a pretty quiet person all the time. But when I'm with Bree and it's just us, I'm not quiet. So she noticed that change in me, right? So I had to think about that. Why am I doing that?
Yeah.
I don't know. There's this, maybe I just don't want to say the wrong thing or whatever it is. But I see my son doing my son, who might be watching. No, he's not. My son, who's going into 8th grade, I've watched his whole fashion sense change this year. The music he listens to has changed this year. Like all that stuff is like, okay, so he's got his buddies and this is what they're about, and he wants to fit in. And that's this is adolescence, and this is what you go through, and you figure things out. But I don't want him to lose himself in that.
Yeah, gosh, that's a hard age.
Yeah.
Because we all get a little lost, especially in middle school.
Yeah.
I think
I was lost all the way through, man.
Yeah, no, that's some hard times right there. I think some of those areas still continue. You say yes to everyone, even when you shouldn't. That happens with me, with my family. I want to say yes because I want to, meet the needs of these people so that I can be considered, a good pastor or something like that, when I really should say no because I have obligation some other areas. Things like that can happen, where we have to just kind of look at that, I think, a little bit. I have to look at that a little bit more carefully and see, why am I feeling the need to say yes? Why do I feel I have to get approval in that way? Or the fear of missing out was another big one. I think that happens a lot with kids, especially kids in church. who can't do things, and all of a sudden it's like my friends are doing everything fun, because they come back to school on Monday and, oh man, that was so great, and everything's better than it really was. But they don't know that. To them, it's just like I'm missing out on life because, I had to go to the youth group, lock in. you know? And some of those things are fun. Kids have a lot of fun at those things too, but, there could be this fear of missing out on life. And I think those kinds of fears and those kinds of pressures are a challenge to our temptation of wanting to do things to belong in some way. And it definitely happens obvious ways, I think, looking back at middle school, but still as adults, I think those things show up.
In different ways maybe, or more subtle ways. I mean, I have, between my two sons, Judah never cared about what other people thought about him. He was always his own self. He's a horrible liar. All those things I never had to worry about.
Yeah.
Levi's a lot like I was when I was in 8th grade. You know what I mean? So now I'm like, oh, great. Here it goes.
Yeah. But what a great gift you have to be able to see those things and help to convey that. I think those are areas where these are the things that we need to teach, right? These are the important things to try and convey. That you're enough. I went to my nephew's graduation last night, and 2020 was just an awful year to go through school, what school they went through, and to graduate from that to this year, there was a lot of dark times in his life through that period. A lot of struggles, and for part of that time he was really having a hard time, like most of the kids, to make it, to show up and just be present there. We had the family, we had dinner, went to Lazy Dog, and kind of celebrated, and I think everyone was just kind of reiterating to him, we love you, we were always here for you, we've got your back. And that's really the message we want to send to him is, you're enough, buddy.
Yeah.
You have no idea how much you're loved. And whatever hell this last year was to you, it makes no difference to us how much we love you. It doesn't affect that at all. And you could have failed and we would still be here in your corner.
Yeah.
In fact, his mom even said something like that. It doesn't matter. We're here for you. Right?
Yeah.
And I just thought that was such a beautiful thing to hear everyone just saying over and over again. And I think that's the thing that we should be sharing with our youth, with, the people who are part of our community, is you're enough. You don't have to do anything to be more to God. You don't. You don't have to say a prayer to be accepted. You're already accepted. Saying a prayer is a good thing. It connects you to what the need is in your life, but it doesn't make you any better. Yeah. It doesn't make you any more loved or less loved. It doesn't change how God sees you. And if you say a prayer and then go out and do something foolish and destructive and something that's bad for you, God doesn't change his love for you.
Yeah.
Just doesn't. I think it's important that people know that, because that it's almost like the belonging, if it's there, it will stop maybe not stop it, but it may help not feel the need to find it in so many harmful ways.
Yeah. I'm just thinking about like the graduation thing sticks with me because, we celebrated my son this weekend. He graduated, what I thought was going to be by the skin of his teeth, right? Like I was like, is this going to happen? Like the week before, are you going to do this? Or, you know what I mean? Like I was like in his room, I was in his face. I was sitting in his room to make sure he was going to do it. Right. And I'm just thinking the whole time, I wonder, what message am I presenting here? Because when he did do it, he got the best report card of his high school career.
Oh, wow.
And and then and then we had the celebration where we were like, oh man, we're so proud.
Yeah.
But I was wondering, like, when you were talking, like, I wonder what he was thinking when I was shouting at him and like, wringing his neck, and not really, but like
Yeah.
that struggle. I don't think he felt like I was proud of him then,
Yeah.
but I am. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there's got to be some kind of like, it can't all just be like,
Yeah, everything's fine.
it
Yeah.
can't be cake every day.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
No, the reality of life has to be there, and you have to journey with it. I think that difference, though, again, kind of dealing with the shame aspect, right? Of, your shaming usually doesn't produce healthy responses. I'm not sure. I think still sometimes it might be good to feel shame if you've done something that's shameful, but it doesn't mean you're someone who has to live there.
Yeah.
It should be something that awakens our senses to more, that we can be more, but it doesn't identify who we are. And so
Yeah.
if I do something bad, I did something bad, and I might feel ashamed of it. It does not mean I'm bad. It means I did something bad, and I'm still loved.
Yeah, and I feel like that's the point I took from the video that you showed on Sunday too, where it's like, man, you can live in that, but that's not where the good stuff is, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's not where you're going to connect with God or with other people, or that sense of belonging, that's the right belonging. Because when you're living in shame, and like she said, she was in ministry, right?
Mm-hmm.
And everything, like, on the surface looked like, hey, I'm doing a great job, but her personal life was falling apart, probably because she wasn't paying much attention. We've all been there.
Yeah. Well, ministry's fine, but my life is going to hell in a handbasket.
Yeah.
All of this is striking at something. I know for a lot of people who might be hearing this or come in and tune into this, who grew up in a fundamental Christian world, the idea that you're enough, the idea that you're good, strikes at the heart of this, I don't know what we call it, total depravity. That your righteousness is filthy rags, that there's nothing good, not one thing, there's none good. This idea that man is just not even worth God's thought, but God loved you, and so, he sent Jesus anyway. It could strike at the heart of that. Why don't we lean into that just for fun? Because I think that's important. I think that's an important part of this conversation of belonging. How does I don't want you, I could throw it on your, here, Randy, answer this. But how does that strike you in those things that maybe you've heard like that?
Yeah, I'll answer that. I don't know if we'll agree on this or not, but that'll make it more interesting.
Yeah.
I think of, like, Psalm 8, right? Like David going, like, who am I that you would even think of me?
Yeah.
And I think that, like, I identify with that.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, in the context of what he's writing about, the glory of creation, right?
Yeah.
And looking at it all and going, like, man, and me too? You know what I mean? Like, you did all this and me too? Like, there's beauty in that. And not going, like, like, well, you made all this for me, and, like, you know what I mean? There's two sides of that.
Yeah.
And so there's humility in it, and there is the idea that that God is it gives God this opportunity to go, yes, you.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes, and you, of course.
Yeah.
Rather than us assuming that. I don't know if that makes any sense.
No, I think it does. And I think, the humility, and I think even Jesus, he saw the people as harassed and helpless, sheep without a shepherd. I don't think there's any denying that there is something broken in us that needs to be fixed. But there's a difference between seeing something that's broken or seeing someone who's sick and wanting to heal them than someone who's terrible and needing to do something so that you can tolerate them.
Yeah.
Right? And that's where I think the difference lies.
Yeah.
You know, Paul uses the illustration of circumcision, which is a medical procedure, circumcision of our hearts, where we need this, or the transplanting, giving us a heart of flesh from a heart of stone. These are surgical metaphors to help us understand that there's something sick in us. There's a cancer that God needs to heal. And the reason God needs to heal it is because God loves us, right? It's not that we won't be accepted as we are, because while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. It's just that if we don't get this, it's going to kill us, right? And it'll destroy our lives, and God doesn't want that. So he wants the surgery for us to bring the healing to us, to bring restoration for us. That's kind of how I see it. So there's never, God can't look at you because his eyes are too holy to behold sin. I know there's passages, that talk about that, but I believe they're contextual to what God is talking about in the areas of Israel and not to humanity in general, because we see Jesus saying different words. We see him saying, you're the light of the world, you're the salt of the earth, the sheep who's lost and leaving the 99, the coin, and finding it, the prodigal son. These are all illustrations to give us an insight into how God feels, right?
Just in real life terms, the thing, I'm trying to phrase this correctly, but when I maybe was in a fundamentalist mindset, I'd go to work and I'd share an office with a guy. I've talked about him a million times because he's still a friend of mine, and he's an atheist. But he was not just an atheist; he was like, "I'm going to change your mind" kind of atheist, right? And he knew that I was a fundamentalist, so we had this weird dynamic where we were. It was like, "This is my buddy. We're going to argue about this for a half hour, and then we're going to go have lunch together." We're not like that anymore because things have changed. I think for both of us, you know what I mean, like whatever you call it, but just that idea that like I would have this, all men are evil. There's nothing good apart from Christ, and then I'd see Jeb and his family, and what a good dad he is, right?
Yeah.
And what a good husband he was, and what a good friend he was, and or like the story I told you on Sunday about the Indian lady, like those experiences in my life where I was like, well, how can I say that these people are not accepted or evil, you know what I mean, or just nothing good in them, because I see the good in them. Yeah.
And again, that's where we can change the narrative, or we change how we see things. Well, it's there's pride. That's they're doing it for the wrong reasons. Like, I don't know why they're doing it.
Right.
They seem like good people to me, and I was in the same situation where there's people in my family. My cousin Karen, she married an incredible man named Jeff who passed away, and he's the kind of guy who put most pastors I know to shame in how much he cared for people and did for people. But he wasn't a Christian. But boy, he sure was a good person. I don't know that I know really a better person in so many ways. And so those are the kinds of things that, of course he was accepted. Of course he was loved. Of course he belonged. I'm sure there's still broken things in his life. We're all broken in some degree. I mean, but those aren't the things that stop God from loving, stop God from caring, stop God from reaching out. I believe that all those things that he did, those were evidences of God working in his life.
Yeah.
God was close to him. You could tell by who he was. It just looks a lot different than maybe I've been told, or how I've been kind of led to believe, no, you have to say this prayer, you get into the club, and now you're okay. Instead of, no, God's looking at you saying, hey, I want you in my club right now like you are. You don't have to change. I'll take you as you are, and then we can start from there. And then that continued work, continuing work that, uh, sanctification, the theological word starts to take place, where God starts molding, shaping, changing, doing works and making us more aware. And I do believe that, Christ is the key to our understanding the work and how it takes place. And so having an awareness of those things in us helps us to maybe allow that to process a little bit more. But then again, I see people who have Christ who aren't changing, who aren't growing, who know the Bible, who are in the words works life, but never get to the wants part of their life, never get to those deeper heart issues. So there's just a lot of things there. And I think the idea of belonging cuts through those things, where we have to start with the fact that you're loved. We have to start with the fact that you belong. Have to start with the fact that this is how God sees you. And then let's go from there.
Yeah.
Because that can change everything. That could keep you from wanting to take your life. That could keep you from thinking, I can't get along with people, or people won't accept me because I, drink too much, I'm gay, I do these things, whatever it is. If a person knows, no, right now, right where you're at, you are loved, you belong. Let's start here, right? And that way, let God do whatever work needs to be done, and that's something you and God can kind of work out, like I'm having to work it out.
Yeah. Do you see that as your job as a pastor, or do you see that as the job of every Christian?
Which part?
I guess, let me back up a minute. Introducing somebody to Jesus, and connecting them to, and that idea of belonging.
Yeah, I definitely feel that's my desire as a pastor, is to lead people to have a conversation with God, and then let God take that conversation from there. I have no desire to manipulate the conversation that person has with God, because I don't know where that person is and what conversation needs to be had. And there are definitely conversations that need to be had, and there's some conversations that I'll recommend a counselor to, because that's not my field. And maybe there's issues going on in your life you need to reckon with that have shaped you to where you're at. My job is just to get you to the table and say, there's food here you can eat. That's what I feel. That's what I want to do. I want to let everyone know that they have a seat at this table. They're welcome here, and I want to pull up the chair for them. I want to set the table for them, and let God then, serve that meal, whatever it's going to be.
Yeah, that's heavy, and I do feel like that's probably, where a lot of Christians are at. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not sure, because we've also kind of been. There's discipleship. There are things beyond just this, like seat at the table. But that is to me, that's the quintessential part of maybe being a pastor, but also just like living a life of faith, right? Like, like I want the same thing. I want to connect people, because I don't, whatever issues that are keeping them from that connection. Yeah. If it's shame or, acceptance or whatever, any of these things that we're talking about, whatever it is, I deal with those too. Yeah. And so I'm not like coming at anybody or you're not coming at anybody going like, well, I've figured this out. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, this is why you should come to this church. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's not that at all. It's like, hey, look, we're all in this. We're all at this table together.
I think if I were to refine even just what I just said, it would be, I feel that is the job of every Christian. Yeah. Everyone who's a follower of Jesus is to set a table for whoever's there in their, sphere of influence. My job, maybe more specifically as a pastor, is to help people to do that. Mm-hmm. Teach them what I see as ways that can take place. And that's why there's a lot of, or has been for me, a lot of, stepping back and re-examining how I've believed things and how I've done things. There was a time when I would have, instead of like Jesus, served breakfast and ate with Peter, I would have made him do a test and, answer these questions and study these books and get all the information right to make sure he knew not to do that again. Instead of just, no, I'm going to sit down and have a meal with you and let you know your family and you belong here, And so I've had to reconstruct a lot of, my faith, seeing things in that light, seeing scripture different, seeing Jesus different, and seeing it, I feel more accurately. I don't feel like I'm, saying, away with scripture. I feel like I'm actually looking at it more clearly. And so in doing that, I've had to change how I present this message to people, even like we've been talking about it, that people are loved, people belong, people are accepted, that God is already sitting there waiting for them to come in, or he's standing at the door knocking so that they will open the door and let him come in. They don't have to do anything but give permission, right? That's all. Just give permission for God to work in your life, because he already is there at the door.
Yeah.
That's a whole different picture than what I used to present.
Yeah.
And so I think though that's at the heart of this belonging. Understanding that he longs to gather them as the hen gathers, the chicks. He that's his desire for them. That's always been his desire for us. I did put one point. It's important we don't overcome the temptation of belonging by despising others and cutting ourselves off from healthy relationships. Belonging is genuine, God-given need to desire to belong is good. Because sometimes we can despise people who don't see things our way, and that doesn't make us belong either. That doesn't make us closer to Jesus by not liking other people who we think are bad,
Yeah.
because that just is pleasing our need to feel better.
Yeah.
I think.
We're weird people.
Yeah.
People are weird, but there is that, that's a fantastic point, because, we've talked about this before, but even in our little community church here, there are, there are people on both sides of every position, theological and political, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We're pretty diverse, small community, and that can be troublesome, or it can be beautiful.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
Yeah.
I love it. I love it when I can disagree with somebody and still be family at the table, right?
Yeah.
I love it when we can challenge each other in the way we think, in the way we, approach the subject. And I love the fact that I'm having to learn how to respect people who have differing views than mine, views that I might think are wrong, views that I might think are foolish, and to respect that person and their views before I answer. Right? It's like, I need to see you, I need to hear you, I need to know you to know that I see and hear you, that I respect you, and now we can talk.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, those are things I've learned and I'm learning still. But gosh, I can't imagine that, Matthew and Simon the Zealot didn't have issues at the dinner table. I can't imagine that two of them didn't sit down and start, sniping at each other with things, and how they saw the world and stuff like that. I bet those are conversations that were, fun. fun because at the end of the day, they're here at the same table,
Yeah.
and I think that's part of the story that we're trying to tell is, yeah, you can be on both sides and still be at the same table.
Yeah.
You can have a different view and still belong.
And that's what belonging looks like.
Exactly. It definitely is family. Jason, I know you texted me and said that you got some stuff from the time.
Yeah, and for me, like, just again, being raised in the church and being part of very conservative churches where I felt like I wasn't accepted, and even going through, my life, just for what I've recently gone through, just through, going through a divorce, you feel like you're not accepted, and never was accepted by the family, and just knowing that it was true, but then just finding my kind of, it may not be a church group, but finding my group of soccer fans, my group I'm part of, which has changed my life completely. The Empire Boys, it's like my family. I got to go to the game this past Saturday, and I'll be honest, I just started getting teary-eyed when I walked through the stadium, because it was like I was home. That's my home, and it was just emotionally good for me. Even being a punk rocker, being involved in the punk scene. When you're a punk rocker, when you go to your first punk show, I'll still never forget being a 15-year-old kid on my first punk show, and like seeing other people who were different like me, but we were all cool with each other. It was just,
Yeah.
it helped me out a lot. Punk music just helped me probably not to kill myself.
Yeah.
And there's people who have disagreed with me with that and said it's made me a freak and made me weird and made me, it's the reason why I have my mental health issues. But punk music is what's caused me not to kill myself, because you got a sense of belonging there.
Yeah.
It's
That's
sad
powerful.
that most churches I've been to, I never was accepted.
Yeah. Now that's powerful. That the fact that you can find those places, how important that is for you to find, whether it's in the soccer club, or a punk scene or whatever. I know that Bono said that the Ramones are how he got started. I was hearing Joey Ramone, and they wrote that one song. I forget the name of it now. It's a dedication to Joey Ramone or something like that, where he talks about, he heard punk rock and he says, there's a place for me. And that's how you two got started.
Yeah.
So belonging is huge, and that's cool that you're finding that there. And of course we want you to find it here, and I think that's an important thing too, is belonging is something you should not just find at a church. Right. And unfortunately, I know that it's been presented in so many times that's the only place you can find it, right? But it's not. You found it with the Empire Boys, right? People do find it, now it always varies, right? There's a certain belonging you find there. There's a certain belonging you might find at a church, or a certain belonging you find at a family. Hopefully in all these areas, it's a healthy place. But it's something that we need, and you should be able to find it. And I think the key is you're saying you're finding it as who you are. You're not having to pretend. Right?
Exactly. It's been an emotional roller coaster. Most of my life, the last 2 years, have really been.
Yeah.
And then like this year with COVID, it's just been like not being able to. It's been great coming. One of the reasons why I come Sunday mornings to help set up is because I miss being around our church. And when we had our big watch party together with the Empire Boys, like 2 weeks ago, it was like amazing. And that has helped open up the door for me to co-host a podcast. One of the ladies came up to me. I gave her like a shout out birthday for her on the podcast, and she came up to me. She was crying. She goes, "You have no idea what that meant to me." It's like now I'm able to do that. It's like, man, I'm able to like go every week on this podcast and talk football, soccer, whatever you want to call it, just and punk rock. And my feature is talking about punk music on this podcast. It's like it's a blast, and it's like it's cool. I'll be at games. People will buy me drinks, give me food. I get recognized at Starbucks. It's like, it's pretty cool. It's like,
I'm going to have to hang with you, man. Drinks and Starbucks, man. I'm going to be your friend. Have you seen Ted Lasso?
Oh, yeah.
You've watched that? Okay. I'll say if you haven't, we're gonna go binge that right now. That it's so important that you have a place where you do feel accepted, where you feel that you belong, where you feel that who you are matters to someone else. You know, and I think it's important that we acknowledge to someone else and not just to God, because you can still be very lonely if you just have God. You know what I'm saying? It's
Yeah.
not like that isn't a real thing, and it isn't a powerful and important thing, but it's not good for man to be alone. You know, that's a powerful statement that I think we need to recognize in something like this with belonging.
It is powerful. I've always said that. You know, people. We've talked about this a million times. What is God's will for me? And like, you know, if you're looking for specifics, then you can talk to God about that. But I do know that it's not God's will that you be lonely.
Yeah.
So wherever you are, take that for what it's worth.
Yeah. Be encouraged with that, and find some place where you can be healthy with someone and not alone. I think that's important. You know, I ended kind of with Jesus saying, "Our Father." This is how we should pray, "Our Father." And immediately with that, there is the sense of family. You know, you belong to a family. And think of it, when he was saying that, pray in this way, he was teaching all of us how to do that. And so he's trying to make everyone see that they're a part of this family. You know, and I think that is kingdom mentality. That is the desire for his will be done on earth as it is in heaven, is to help people see that they are a part of God's family and help them to see and understand that too. And so what we need to do is, again, set the table for them, help them know that they belong, not make them feel like they're there. It's them and us, right?
Yeah.
Saints and ain'ts. Those kinds of things where it's like, no, here's a table, here's a chair, you belong here. And it doesn't matter where you're at. You don't have to believe to belong. You can be here, and you can join this family, and I think that's important. Any final thoughts you have, or?
You know what I think is powerful, and I'm not a big affirmations guy. I'm not against them, but I feel silly sometimes. But I think maybe if you watch this, or if you're here tonight, or whatever it might be, look in a mirror and tell yourself that you are God's beloved. And just let that sink in, because I think we don't realize that. As much as we might say it or hear it, confess it, because I think that might be powerful.
Very good, very good. A good final note. I didn't see any messages online, so I should have said at the beginning if you have any questions, but those of you who are out there, thank you for being there. Those who will watch later, if you have any questions, you can always email us at info@thegenesisstory.com, and we will get back to you. Someone gets that email. We'll figure it out. But we will get back to you. And again, you guys belong. You're loved, and we love you. And let's set a table for one another. Help other people know they're welcome and they belong. God bless. Thanks, Jason. Appreciate you being here, man. All right, guys.